This is the type of firewall insulation that they sell at the car swap meets, and people are putting this on their firewall between the engine on the inside of the carriage side, and it should have some fire retardants to it from a safety standpoint, and people are also putting that on the tops of their cars on the roof before they put their headliners in, and they'll glue this right to the ceiling of the inside of the car. And you can see it's sort of like a poly type insulation, or like a closed cell type thing, but it looks more like a plastic, not unlike what you see on the airfoil or the Reflectix, where they have a plastic bubble wrap. Anyway, I wanted to put a little heat to this to see what kind of melting point this would have and how resistant to a flame it actually is. So I got a welder's propane torch, and I just wanted to apply it. You see how it burns? So there isn't a lot of fire retardants to that, and people are putting this in their cars. So it didn't take much. So if you have an electrical fire under your dash and you got this on the inner firewall, there's not much resistance with that. Now that's not the foil, the outer foil, that's the inside. So you would think that it shouldn't be exposed if you seal that right off, but a little bit of heat, you know, the aluminum is taking the heat and it is melting eventually, but you know, I am using a welder's propane torch on it, so direct heat. That's what you use for soldering, so it's it is an extreme temperature that I'm putting it at, but it will burn eventually. So from a fire retardance is not completely safe from a fire standpoint. Okay, this is the airfoil. It's for commercial, residential, industrial use, and it's a high performance reflective insulation. Resisto is the company that manufactures this, and it's the A2A, and I believe that's the same as the Reflectix that everybody else is using. So you can see that there's like a double wrap, a double bubble wrap in the center of this, but I believe it's the same stuff. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to put a torch to it, and I'm going to see how that reacts. Again, I'm going to use the welder's propane, which is extreme heat, but this is what they use for soldering pipes and everything. So propane, it's hot. You see how already it's burning, and the foil can get pretty red hot quickly. Again, this is for welding, so it's extreme heat, but I don't think I want that dripping on me. That's the actual plastic burning. So if a flame, you can hear it popping. That's for insulation. That's what people are using. So you'll see the foil's fine. It's charred. It heats up. So it does get extremely hot, but you can see that it's still fine. So what just melted out of there is the insides. It's the plastic. It's the bubble wrap. Same with the other one, which they're using for the automotive. I don't know the actual name of that. A customer brought that for me, and he wanted me to put it in the car. I wasn't too big on that. I wasn't a big fan of using that stuff. But again, I'm putting it through the extreme situation. But somebody could find themselves, people that are living in vans are actually in there, some of them are in there 24/7, they're living in them, and all you need is a cooking fire if you're cooking inside, or maybe your heater has a bit of an issue. And I wanted to test this because where I'm installing the Espar D2 heater, I wanted to put something that's going to be flame retardant before I actually install it, because ideally where I wanted to put that was under the passenger seat where it's all metal. That's exactly where I'd like to be. But then again, heat goes up, right? A flame will go up if there's ever a fire. You would want some kind of a barrier between that and the seat cushion that the passenger would be sitting on. So I like to look at safety, and I want to make sure that whatever I do here with this one, even though we're working on a budget, and you know, cash flow is an issue, still safety is the most important thing. I'm going to do another test with the airfoil, the Reflectix, and see how it reacts with the foil taped around all the edges so that it encloses the center core. I'd like to see how this will respond with the same propane welder's torch. Again, it's extreme heat, but we saw last time how the inner core melted really easily. So I'd like to do another test with it all sealed off to see how that responds to the heat. Now again, it's extreme. But you see it lifted the tape a bit, but maybe I didn't have it pressed down quite well, but it didn't light up on fire like it did the other time. As soon as I take the heat away, we do have a flame, which means I was able to go through the foil with direct heat. Now again, I'm bringing it to the extreme, as you can see. This is a welder's torch, so I'm able to go right through it. So from a fire rating standpoint, what they usually go by with anything, whether it's household furniture, foam, and all that kind of stuff, when they fire rate something, like this actually went out quite easily. You know, it didn't keep burning like the first one did. However, I was able to put a hole right through this whole thing. Like you can see me looking back at you right now. And usually what they do is a cigarette burn, where you take a cigarette and the fire rating, if they put a cigarette that's fully lit down on an item, whether it's a piece of foam or fabric or anything that claims to be fire retardant or fire resistant, they go by a smolder. Does the cigarette cause the material to ignite on its own? And then if it doesn't, and the cigarette goes out, it talks about a burn rate. So the material or the foam or the fabric or whatever it is you're testing does not become the source of the fire. The source of the fire here is a welder's torch, which is extreme heat. It's designed for soldering, for plumbing, wires, whatever. And so it is an extreme heat, and this is the end result of that. But do people really know that when they're putting it into their home builds? Here's another piece of foam which should light up quite easily. I just want to test that because this is a cross-linked polyethylene, which is a closed cell foam basically, and it is the poly family, which is the same as the core for Reflectix or any of these types of versions, whether it's airfoil or Reflectix or whatever company. So you can see how that'll melt, but again, it's direct fire, it's a direct flame. If I were to put a cigarette on this, would this actually ignite just with the heating element of a cigarette? Will it become the source of a fire? And that's what they look at when they look at fire retardants. Again, direct heat, it'll burn. As soon as I take the heat away, it goes out. So it has a certain amount of fire retardants. See, the flame starts, it'll melt, and then it goes out. So this closed cell polyethylene actually has a certain amount of fire retardants to it. So would this meet the standards of putting into commercial or industrial or residential environment? Yes, it does, because it didn't continue to burn. As soon as I took the extreme torch or the extreme heat away from it, it went out on its own. So this would be a product that I'd be willing to use. The Reflectix, I wasn't 100% sure when I did the first test, but again, when we look at the Reflectix, the airfoil, I did burn a hole through it, but again, that's a direct source of heat going to it. So unless you don't have a fire that's caused by something else, then you shouldn't have any problems with this in your home build. because it didn't continue. It only burned, like it didn't burn here. It burned only where I put the direct flame onto it, and it burned through eventually. And the torch is designed for soldering, so this is only foil. It should be able to go through it eventually. So it performed pretty good in my mind when I compare that to when I did it with the open edges. Would I use it? Yes, I would. The reason why I did the burn test with the foil wrap is simply because I was thinking of lining the box where the D2 heater is with the foil. Now you can see I put this foil tape down as a means to stop any flames if this ever became the source of the fire. See, there has to be a source of the fire. If it did, how long would it take to penetrate the tape? Because I don't want the flames to get under the floor and spread from there. So that's the reason why I put this foil down, and these are the tests that were telling me to go ahead and use it. Again, a direct flame will eventually go through all this, but this would have to be continually burning. So ideally, what kind of a box would I want here? It would be a metal box, ideally, is the way I'd like to go.
Well, since my baby left me. That's perfect.
Do that, Ted. Sing some more.
Do it again. I found a new place to dwell. It's down the end of Lonely Street called Heartbreak Hotel.
I feel so lonely.
Oh. I feel so lonely, baby. I feel so lonely. I feel so lonely I could die.
That's awesome.
Well,